what to make of the way our world has changed so much in the last 4 or 5 months. Do you remember when you used to be able to go into a store and see the helpful smiles in every aisle? Or you could read lips if you couldn't quite understand what someone was saying. What about being able to sit around a dinner table with your family, neighbors, and friends without worrying about how close you are to each other? Things have changed in our daily lives, and we can't even see the thing that has caused these changes. It is a real thing, but we can't see it. And if we can't see it, how can we know that it's really there? You know that phrase, seeing is believing. It would be so much easier to understand what we're fighting if we could see it. And since we can't see it, there's a temptation to think that maybe it isn't really as significant as we are told that it is. Hear no evil, see no evil means I don't have to believe what those who have seen are telling me, because I can't see the microscopic virus. And if I can't see it, maybe I don't have to believe that it's real. I've been thinking about Thomas, the disciple that wouldn't believe that Jesus had risen until he could see the wounds in his hands and feet. I've been thinking about him because I feel like I want to know what is happening and how we move forward. We want to see. We want to believe. But it is so much easier to believe when we can see and hear and touch. Our senses are the way we verify the world around us and us within the world. I am reminded of Helen Keller. She was a healthy child when she was born on June 27th, 1880. She would have watched the patterns of light and dark, heard the cooing of her mother and the voice of her father, until she was just 1.5 years old, when she came down with a disease that robbed her of her sight and her hearing. It's hard to imagine what it would have been like for her. The loneliness, the fear, the need to know that someone is there, that the world hadn't disappeared. Of course, she still had the ability to feel things with her hands and feet and body. I'm told that when one or more of the linkages between the sensory nerves and the brain have been damaged, the brain rewires itself. The senses that remain become more sensitive, and the brain's capacity for memory and language increase. According to an article in Science Daily, there are structural, functional, and anatomical changes in the brains of those born with blindness. This is known as neuroplasticity. According to Dr. Lotfi Meribet, director of the Laboratory for Visual Neuroplasticity in Massachusetts, if the brain can rewire itself through training and enhancing the use of other modalities like hearing and touch and language tasks, such as Braille reading, there is tremendous potential for the brain to adapt. Oh, I am eager to feel that I have adapted. But so far, I'm grieving. I'm grieving for the way I've done my job and will not be able to do it the same way, face to face, at least not for the coming year. I'm grieving for the narrowing of my world, including missing my lay servant ministry classes each quarter. I was looking forward to finishing my first year and moving on to the second year. I am grieving for the ease of a conversation on a lake trail when I see someone I know. Now it seems that we choose a path that will allow for social distancing and those informal conversations when we used to catch up on the news of each other's family don't happen that often anymore. I am grateful. I am grateful that my family is here in Storm Lake, where I can see and hug my husband and my children. I don't mind the social distancing much, because I need to know that they're okay and that I'm okay. As you know, I am a person who is ready with a hug for anyone who needs one. And that's just not allowed right now. For good reason. I don't want to risk making anyone sick. But I miss being able to be near other people, to hug them when they're hurting, and to be hugged when I am hurting. And yet, I understand that by sacrificing my habit of hugging, I can live my faith more fully in this time. In the book of Philippians, chapter 2, verse 4, we read, "Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but to the interests of others." Then we have to remember what my mom told me when I was little. Put yourself in their shoes. And that works a lot of the time. But there are times when we really can't know what being in the other person's shoes actually feels like. We might not know if they're immunocompromised or if they have a safe home to go to. And we might not realize that someone in their family has died from the disease. So what is it that we are to do? Love. We are commanded to love. The love that is made possible through the Holy Spirit. We cannot force love, but we can ask for open hearts, for hope, for kindness and gentleness. We can think more of what the other person may need rather than only what we need. Is it possible to care for others while also caring for family and friends? I think yes. In chapter 14, verse 16, the writer of Hebrews instructs, "Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God." In a time with so much uncertainty at every level of our lives, God asks us to set aside our self-interest. In the book of Hosea, chapter 6, verse 6, God speaks, "For I desire mercy and not sacrifice." It is instructive that in some translations the word mercy is exchanged for love. Mercy is also understood to be related to compassion, how we may offer our love and compassion to our neighbors, those we know and those we don't know, those who live nearby and those who live in the next block, the next neighborhood, the next city. Is it possible to let love be the reason we wear masks, rather than feeling that masks are a sacrifice of something? Can our faith be the better part of how we help to bring the pandemic to an end? What would you give so that your neighbor could be healthy and be able to go to work to feed his family? What would you do so that the children that live in your neighborhood could go to school knowing that it is a safe place for them and for their teachers and the staff to be there? God's commands to love your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, and that you shall love your neighbor as yourself. How would you show your love for God and for your neighbor. Thanks be to God.